Meal timings is actually one of the biggest myths out there, in terms of what people um, get kind of told what works, what doesn't work, etc. And it's something that I've come across a lot. Now, one of the kind of most frequent ones is this kind of 6 meals a day, or eat little and often is much better. It's better for your metabolism because it speeds it up, and that kind of thing. Um, Again, it's a complete myth. Is yes, when you digest food, you speed up your metabolism because you need to use energy to digest that food, but you're not going to use more energy to digest the food than what's in the food already. So if you're eating 500 calories, you might burn 100 calories, 70 calories to digest that food. So that's complete nonsense, basically. Now, the actual kind of another kind of where this came from is that when we're looking at protein and what it does to our body, it basically stimulates a thing called protein synthesis in our muscles, which is a huge part in muscle building, muscle rebuilding. So it's been shown that eating 5 servings of 30 grams of protein to get to, let's say, your target of 150 is better than eating 2 servings of 75 grams. So essentially, is even though you're getting 150 calories, 150 grams of protein in the day, the little and often protein feedings stimulate, every time you have the protein, you're stimulating muscle protein synthesis, and therefore you're going to stimulate more muscle building, rebuilding. Now, you're talking, kind of tiny percentages and that kind of thing. So the most important thing is get your protein in, when it comes to that. And even kind of rewinding that a little bit, is what's more important is being in a calorie deficit. So, irrespective of what you choose, is you've got to make sure you're being in a calorie deficit first and foremost. That average weight coming down is telling you you're in a calorie deficit. Then you can play around with your protein quantity, and then once you got that right, you can play around with your protein feedings if you want to. But remember, that's kind of talking about maximizing muscle building or rebuilding, which again, we don't really need to pay too much attention to. The average person. But the opposite side of this kind of 6 meals a little and often is, these kind of diets, intermittent fasting diets, and there's lots of different ones. There's, you do 1 or 2 24-hour fasts over the course of a week or 10 days. There's the thing called the 5-2 diet, where you eat less than 500 calories 2 days a week and eat normal the rest of the week. There's a 18-6, where basically 16-8 is what it is. So you fast for 16 hours, eat for 8. You've got an 8-hour eating window essentially. But these are all based on not eating. And they work, and as well, eating little and often can work as well. And then you've got your basic 3 square meals. Don't snack in between meals. So there's lots of ways. They all work for some people some of the time. So you've got to choose which one works best for you. So I've had people eat little and often and end up not being able to control their calorie intake. I've had people try intermittent fasting and it just not work for them, on a social level and anything like that. So you don't have to do any of them. Find what works for you. You can, eat 2 big meals and 2 small snacks. Eat 3 square meals and 2 snacks, 1 snack, whatever. It doesn't matter. One thing I will kind of say is that generally what I consider a meal is any time you eat, rather than saying I'm having a meal and a snack and a meal and a snack or whatever. It's just a meal is any time you eat. And by kind of having that mindset, you get a bit more structure on your day. And you kind of don't almost see the snacks as something secondary, because they're all calories. So we've got to, kind of, focus on reducing our calories. We want to get into a calorie deficit. So then one of the big things as it comes to is kind of meal timing is actually, don't eat after 7 p.m. or 6 p.m. or whatever. There's a big myth that people think eating late at night is, can cause weight gain and all sorts of things like that. But what's the difference between eating and finishing your last meal at 6:59 and eating at 1 minute past 7? Do you know what I mean? What's the difference in terms of your metabolism or your body? There is none. Do you know what I mean? There is no magical fat storing fairies that come out at 7 p.m. at night and start as soon as any calorie you eat up past 7 p.m. is going to get stored as fat versus 6:59. I've said this before, is every time we eat, we go into fat storage mode. So it's irrelevant what time you eat. You're always actually going to store fat when you eat. Now, ultimately, calories are the only thing that matters. So I'll give you an example in terms of, let's say somebody's at 2,000 calories. That's their maintenance in terms of their metabolism, they burn off about 2,000 calories a day. So let's say by 6 p.m. they've eaten 1,800 calories, and at 6:45 they add another 500 calories in, and now they've eaten 2,300 calories. So they are in a surplus, okay? So even though they're not eating after 7 p.m., they're still in a surplus. And what about another person who basically is only eating 200 calories by 6 p.m. and at 8 p.m. eats 1,000 calories? They've only eaten 1,200 calories for the day, which means they're in a calorie deficit. So the person who eats 1,000 calories at 8 p.m. at night is actually going to lose weight. And the person who doesn't eat after 7 p.m. is not going to lose weight, and they're going to gain weight. So somebody's asked me something before, is like, oh, but because you're not moving, you're just going to bed, is that not all going to just store as fat? But the thing is, you got to look at it's the net result, it's the net surplus and the net deficit that matters. So if we look at this person at 6 p.m. not only eating 200 calories up till 6 p.m. or 8 p.m. that day, is they're essentially in a deficit for the entire day. They're burning fat for the entire day because they've only put in 200 calories. They've burnt off way more than that to go about their day. And so it doesn't matter that at 8 p.m. they're putting in 1,000 calories because they're still in a net deficit for the day. Whereas the other person has been in a net surplus, 2,300 calories. So even though they're not eating from 7 p.m. till 7 a.m. the next morning or something like that, they've still put themselves in a surplus. And if they do that every day, they're never in a deficit. So I hope that kind of makes sense in terms of that kind of meal timing and things like that. And one of the reasons why I wanted to go through it was because a lot of people get cravings in the evening times. And people tend to try to use willpower to kind of beat their cravings. It's like, I won't eat after 7 p.m. But going from, like, let's say if you eat dinner at 6 p.m, going from there to bedtime for some people is like 3, 4, 5+ hours. It's a long time to go without eating. So there is a bit difference between obviously physical hunger and cravings, which is more kind of emotional hunger. And physical hunger is, you'll kind of feel it in your stomach. It'll increase as it goes, and kind of can be accompanied with growling and sort of stuff. Whereas emotional is more kind of sudden, and these kind of urges. Now, again, we kind of generally do tend to know the difference between what we're craving and whether we're hungry or not. But one of the things with cravings is we're not craving the food, we're craving the feeling the food gives you. So that's really important to understand. You're not craving the food, you're craving the feeling the food gives you. So a lot of people will blame their sweet tooth. If it was just a sweet tooth, a teaspoon or two of sugar will curb a craving for sugar. But it's not. It's the feeling the food gives you, and 2 teaspoons of sugar is not going to give you any sort of feeling or reward or anything like that. So it's the, as I said, it's the feeling the food gives you. So being aware of that is really important. So because some of the reasons why people will kind of get cravings and stuff like that is, again, the feeling, looking for stress release, for comfort, for reward. I deserve this. Boredom, or there's association. Like in terms of the association is like you go to a restaurant, well, you kind of associate it with having a three-course meal. You go to the cinema, you associate it with having popcorn and snacks and stuff like that. You're sitting down watching Netflix, you associate that with, and so on and so things. So again, it's the environment that you're kind of associating that you eat at. But what I want to get to is that we're going from along this shift from a can't have or I'm not allowed or this restrictive mindset versus I can have and I'm choosing to have mindset. So what I'd always recommend is about 10% of your daily calories to eliminate your craving. And essentially is you basically take 10% of your daily calories. For most people it's somewhere between 150, 250 calories. And you allow yourself whatever it is that you like, in terms of some chocolate, some crisps, whatever it is that you tend to like to snack on. There is some rules to this, and I would recommend putting some rules on it for yourself, but like don't buy in bulk if you can't moderate it. So for example, if you like, cheese and onion crisps or something like that, don't buy like a 9-pack or a 12-pack, bag of packets and know that eating one when you've got 11 left in the cupboard, you're going to want to eat more, okay? So that's the kind of tendency. Make sure you can control what you're eating. So one of the questions though I would always ask with this is moderation lacking because there's too much restriction? So oftentimes when I investigate, and I always ask questions about people's habits, food habits, and I kind of try and delve really deep into them to try and find, okay, what's the underlying thing here? And a lot of times when it comes to people, these, I have no willpower. If I open one, one packet, I'll have 10 or whatever like that. And in some cases that can be true, but in an awful lot of cases what I find is that the person is trying so hard not to eat the food. They're putting this can't have, I'm not allowed, I'm not allowed. It basically, as soon as they tip over the edge and eat the food, they're like, screw this. I'm going to stuff myself silly with it because I haven't had it for the last 2 or 3 days, and I'm not supposed to have it for the next 2 or 3 days, so I'm just going to have it all now. Whereas when you have I can have this, and I'm choosing to have this, and I'm actually putting this in as part of my plan, then you can, it completely removes this restrictive mindset, which means that generally people go, well, I can have a packet now because tomorrow I'm having a packet, and I'm having a packet the next day, and I'm having a packet the next day, and I'm having a packet the next day. And that way you can get much more consistent results because you're teaching yourself how to be in a calorie deficit while still eating these so-called bad, unhealthy foods or whatever. And another thing to look at is calorie substitution. So if you were, tending to eat, a lot of calories at 7:30, 8 o'clock, and it's this uncontrollable kind of binges type of thing, you can swap your calories out for 600 for 200 or whatever, but just make sure that you're not swapping out calories for the same amount of calories. So like, for example, 2 apples is 160 calories in it. So if someone's eating 200 calorie chocolate bar at like 7 p.m. at night or 8 p.m. at night, and then they go, I'm going to be healthy and I'm going to have 2 apples instead, or I'm going to have some rice cakes with peanut butter or something like that, and you're only really saving 40 calories if that's not going to put any sort of indentation into your results. It's not going to put you into a huge calorie deficit, and therefore then when you go and check your weight, you're not making any progress. You're like, what's the point in being this restrictive? So that's why I said it's kind of like, it's important to know what you're swapping out. And then, as I said, is one of the things is, if you have an uncontrollable urge of eating things because of the can't have restrictive mindset, what if you had 200 calories and then you had 200 calories the next night, instead of having these 600, 800, 1,000 calorie binges? So that's the kind of big thing is I generally always recommend planning a snack for people who get cravings at 7:30, 8 p.m. And literally put it in as part of your plan that I must eat chocolate at this time. I have to eat chocolate at this time. Because generally what happens over time, people start to actually eat it less, because it's like, I don't really want it today. I don't need it today. I don't feel like it today. But the fact that they can have it means that they're making the choice rather than being forced into not eating what they like. It's this kind of deprivation kind of type of thing, which is never going to work. So any questions, as always, let me know.